So till the time you are not adding the Spring Security dependency, definitely every URL is free. You can access this URL is actually available for the public use. But once actually you are opening the pom.xml file, and after opening the pom.xml file, once you are adding the Spring Boot Starter security dependency, now by default, all the URLs are going to be login protected. Means to access any URL of your REST controller, you have to first make login. To make the login, definitely first we need the user ID and the password. And if I'm talking about the user ID and the password, then by default, Spring is going to create an account. When Spring is going to create an account, then in this condition, if we are talking about the default username, then definitely the default username is going to be user. And if we are talking about the default password, then the default password will be printed on the console. But on the other hand, if you wanted to configure the username and password according to yourself, then definitely you need to open the application.properties file. Into the application.properties file, spring.security.user.name. This property actually contains the username. Similarly, spring.security.user.password. This property actually contains the password. So username is also available. Apart from that, password is also available. So username and password both are available. Here you can write down. Once you have specified the username password here, then definitely you will be able to make login using these credentials. Then yesterday, actually, when I was talking to you, then one thing that I told you, if you wanted to make login into the Postman, then first of all, you have to open the Postman. After opening the Postman, what you have to do, you have to type whatever URL that actually you wanted to type. So for example, let's say that I wanted to hit the URL welcome. Definitely this URL is a login protected URL. So first of all, let me run this application and then we will talk about the remaining part. So first I'm running this application as a Spring Boot application, pressing Alt Shift X B. Yes. So server is started at the port number 8080. Initially everyone, when I'm available on the Postman. So in case of the Postman, if I try to hit that URL, clicking on the send button, then ultimately I am actually ended up with the HTTP status code 401. The HTTP status 401 actually clearly state that I am not logged in so far. And because I am not logged in so far, that's why I am not able to access that resource. How to make login? To make login, I have to talk about the authorization. Into the authorization, first I have to type the username. My username is Masai. And then I have to password. The password is going to be 12345. Username and password, this form will be visible when we will click on the basic authentication or when we will select the basic authentication under the authorization tab. Now user ID and password both are provided here. I am clicking on the send button. So I am getting the message welcome, all is well. Similarly, if I wanted to access the next one, so I am clicking on the hello button and then I am finding that again all is well because I am logged in. If I wanted to make logout, can I make logout also? Yes, I can make logout. There is no problem. There is no problem. I will be able to make logout. But actually when I am hitting the logout button, then can you see that actually there is one problem available. I am getting the response in the terms of HTML that is not expected in case of Postman. That is not expected in case of Postman. So how to make logout in case of Postman? Simple, actually your remove this user ID and password. Now you are automatically kind of logged out. So this time if I try to access the welcome page, so when I try to access the welcome page, again you can see that I am getting the error message 401. That is unauthorized is the message I am getting. So this point clear everyone, how to make login, how to make logout in case of Postman. There is no separate login logout functionality available. There is no separate URL for the login logout. Just what you have to do, directly go to the authorization tab. Into the authorization tab, select the basic authentication. After selecting the basic authentication, then you have to provide the username and password here. For every request, you have to keep the basic authentication selected. You have to provide the username and password. If this part is okay, then definitely everything is okay. If this part is okay, then definitely everything is okay. Is that point okay? How to make login logout? That's nice. So this is what actually I am talking to you about the Postman. Here actually one more question that arises. This is new content. Please pay attention. One more question that often arises is, sir, how exactly Spring Security is checking whether a person is logged in or not? How exactly Spring Security is checking whether a person is logged in or not? So if I'm talking about how exactly Spring is checking whether a person is logged in or not, for this thing we have to talk about few more interfaces and classes. Like one of the interface is available. The name of the interface is actually called the authorization filter interface. Name of the interface is actually called the authorization filter interface. So you can see Question is that how exactly Spring is checking if the user is authenticated or not. So if I'm talking about, so there is actually one interface is available. The name of the interface is called authorization filter interface. Let me directly take you to the authorization filter. So you can see directly into the documentation. If I'm talking about the authorization filter, then can you see one thing that it is responsible for? It is directly a subclass of generic filter bean class. Yesterday, did you remember hierarchy? Filter was available, generic filter bean is available, then once per request filter is available, then finally basic authentication is available. So sorry, one class is available. The name of the class is actually referred as the authorization filter class. The authorization filter class, so see, it is an authorization filter that actually restrict access to URL using authorization manager. It is actually accessing the an authorization filter that restrict access of the URL using the authorization manager. See, whenever we are talking about the Spring Security, then definitely Spring Security is directly working on the concept of filters. Yes or no? Whenever we are talking about concept of Spring Security, can we say that directly it is working on the concept of filter? Simple question, answer is yes. When it is working on the concept of filter, so definitely once we are adding the dependency, then filters are automatically activated. They are automatically intercepting the request, and authorization filter is a class that is automatically registered in the container. For every request, it is checking whether the person is logged in or not. If person is logged in, then well and good. If person is not logged in, then definitely he is not allowed to proceed further. If I'm talking about methods of this class, forget about the method. The main thing that actually I am interested in is all about the constructor. Can I say this class is having only single parameterized constructor? Please take a look. Yes, it is. So whenever actually Spring container, whenever Spring Security is going to create object of this class, so first of all, actually it need to create the object of the authorization manager. Now, what exactly this authorization manager is? So you can see that authorization manager, this is a functional interface. How many methods does a functional interface have? How many methods a functional interface has? Only one method is available. So see, if I'm talking about the authorization manager interface, then you can see that an authorization manager can determine if authentication has access to a specific object or not. An authorization manager can determine if an authentication has access to a specific object or not. How exactly it is checking? Can you see two methods are available? One method that is called the check method. Another method is called the verify method. So verify method is the default method. We are not concerned with that. But if I'm talking about the check method, it actually determines if access is granted for a specific authentication and object. So you can see that if I'm talking about the parameter of this method, then the parameter of this method is the supplier, which is applicable on the authentication. Okay. If I'm talking about the supplier, then if I am going to implement the supplier interface using lambda expression, how many parameters do I need to pass? If I want to implement a supplier using functional interface or lambda expression, how many parameters do I need to pass in the implementation? Number of parameters that I need to pass is 0, because supplier does not take any parameter, but actually it return a value. Supplier does not take any parameter, but actually it return a value. Can I say that this supplier is going to give us the object of, the first parameter is going to be authentication, second parameter is going to be object. So if I'm talking about the first, then definitely this is an authentication object. And if you remember the authentication object, then yesterday I talked to you about the authentication hierarchy. First, actually an interface is available that is called the authentication interface. Who is the parent of the authentication interface? Principal. Who is the child class of authentication class? There was some abstract authentication classes available. Below the abstract authentication class, there is one class available that is called username password authentication token. Did you remember? There is hierarchy. Yesterday I discussed to you, and in that hierarchy I talked to you about one class. The name of the class is called username password authentication token class. So definitely the object of username password authentication token class will be provided here. Then authentication manager object will be provided here. The authentication manager using the check method will check whether this object is having access to the authentication object or not. If it is having access, then well and good. If it is not having access, then definitely you will be redirected to the login page. If I'm talking about the return type of this method, then the return type of this method is actually referred as the authorization decision. The return type of this method is actually referred as the authorization decision. So if I'm talking about the authorization decision, then can you see that authorization decision class is an independent class? It is directly having object class at its parent class. What exactly this class is presenting? This class is actually presenting the authorization decision, successful or fail. And you can see that directly when a Spring Container is going to create object of this, single parameter constructor is available, but dependency is of primitive type. So definitely Spring Container can create, no problem. Can you see that there is only one method available, and that method is called the isGranted method? The isGranted method is going to declare the result in the terms of true or false. So what exactly takes place? First of all, whenever we are trying to access any URL, no matter whether we are logged in or we are not logged in. First of all, authentication manager is a first of all. There is one class available. The name of the class is called the authorization filter class. The authorization filter class is first of all actually intercepting the URL, and after intercepting the URL, it is actually responsible for checking whether whether the user is authorized to access the page or not. So first of all, actually, when this object is going to be created by the Spring filter, by the Spring container, so first of all, object of the authorization manager has to be created. To create the object of the authorization manager, definitely we have to talk about the implementing classes. And when we are talking about the implementing classes, then you know that lot of classes are already available here. Let them be available. And actually, if I'm talking about the useful method, then the useful method is going to be the check method. The check method is returning you result in the form of authorization decision. So overall, these three classes are first of all responsible for checking whether a object is responsible for whether an object is capable to access a resource or not. These three classes clear, everyone? Yesterday, this discussion was not there. Yesterday, we did not have that discussion. Okay, then actually I'm talking about the next part. So while talking about the next part, let's say that if your login system is failed, or let's say that you are not authorized. If you are not authorized, then definitely on the web browser login page will be displayed. On the web browser, first of all, login page will be displayed. Answer is yes. So how exactly login page is displayed? To display the default login page, there is one class available. The name of the class is referred as the username password. Sorry, the name of the class is default login page generating filter. And if I'm talking about the default login page generating filter, which is the parent class? Generic filter bean class is the parent class. So this is for internal use with the namespace configuration in case where a user doesn't configure a login page. The configuration code will insert the filter in the chain instead and will only work if a redirect is used to the login page. Overall, this is responsible for generating the login page. And can you see there is one field available? The name of the field is called default login page URL. If I'm talking about the default login page URL's value, then can you see that the default value of the login page URL is /login? That is the same thing that we were using. This is the same thing that actually we were using. So for example, let's say that onto the browser, if I try to access http localhost 8080/welcome, where I'm redirected, where I'm redirected to the login page. So how exactly this URL is formed? This URL is already configured into the Spring. This URL is already configured into the Spring. Is that point okay? /login. It is a constant field available. And apart from that, error parameter name is also there. If I'm talking about the value of the error parameter name, then the value of the error parameter name is error. So during the login, if there is any error available, then using the request.get attribute error, you can access the same. If I'm talking about the constructor of the default login page generating filter, can I say that it does not have any further dependency? Can I say that it does not have any further dependency? First constructor, yes or no? Yes. So definitely directly object of default login page generating filter can be created. There is no problem. There is no problem. Now let me do a simple job. For example, let's say that intentionally I am typing incorrect username and password. When I'm typing the incorrect username and password and thereafter actually I am hitting the login button, I'm not able to make login. And can you see that into the question mark there is one error available? Into the question mark there is error available. So this error actually represent that there is something went wrong. And definitely in case of Spring, login form, we have to display that credential. Let me go for the empty submission. When I'm going for the empty submission, then I'm not allowed to make the empty submission because these fields are required. Now let me go for Masai, and thereafter I am talking about the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, clicking on the sign in button. Now am I signed in successfully? Now, am I signed in successfully? Answer is yes. Yes, this time I am signed in successfully. So can I say that once login is successful? But here, yesterday when I was talking to you about the login logout system, so while having the discussion about the login logout system, I was having a discussion to you about the basic authentication filter in case of Postman. Remember? In case of Postman, initially I was having discussion to you about the basic authentication filter. Okay. This time when actually I am making login using the web browser. So while making login using the web browser, basic authentication filter is not useful. This time actually another filter is useful, and this filter is actually referred as the username password authentication filter. So if I'm talking about the parent class of username password authentication filter, the parent class of username password authentication filter is abstract authentication processing filter and abstract authentication filter. So for the abstract authentication processing filter, subclasses are cache authentication filter, subclasses are authentication filter, SAML to web SSO, and username authentication filter. And if I'm talking about the class that is called basic authentication filter class, if I'm talking about the basic authentication filter class, overall everyone, actually you can find one thing. If I'm talking about the generic filter bean, then definitely the generic filter bean is common for both username password authentication filter class as well as for the basic authentication filter class. This is something that is common for both. The username password authentication filter is applicable when we are making login on the web browser using form. Is that clear? When we are making login using the username password on the web browser, then basic authentication doesn't work. This time, username password authentication filter is actually working. So basic authentication is something that you should use on the Postman, and form-based login is something that actually you should use on the web browser. Okay, if I'm talking about this form, let's say again, let me first of all make login. First of all, let me make logout. I'm making logout. After making logout, you can see that actually there is form available. Control U. This is HTML source. Everybody comfortable with basics of HTML? Everybody comfortable with basics of HTML? Form tag. I hope that you all of you know. Method is post action equal to slash login. What is the mean of method? What is the mean of action? This is also comfortable. Yes, it is. And here actually you can see that, can you see that input type equal to text, ID equal to username, name equal to username. So practically actually the data of this form field, the data of the first form field where exactly I am writing Masai, this data of the form field will be accessed into the Spring framework by this variable name. Similar to that, if I'm talking about the input type equal to password, name equal to password, the data of the password field that actually I am writing, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This data will be accessed into the Spring using the field name password. Sir, is that username password always common, or is that field name always fixed? Answer is yes. Why exactly this is fixed? So can you see that there are two constants available? One constant whose name is Spring Security Form Password Key. Another key is available, Spring Security Form Username Key. And if I'm talking about the value of the Spring Security Username Key, can you see what is the value of the key for the username? Can you see what is the value of the password for the password? So can I say that Spring is drawing the form, and what is going to be the field name? This is already configured. This is already configured. Is that point okay? Shall I proceed further? Yes, it is. So always keep in mind that the login system that is working in case of browser and the login system that is working on the Postman, they are different, they are not same. Okay, if I'm talking about the username password authentication filter, so if I'm talking about the constructor of the username password authentication filter, can you take a look at the second constructor, authentication manager? And if I'm talking about the authentication manager, then the same thing that yesterday we did is going to continue. Authentication manager is an interface that is going to play its role no matter whether you are using basic authentication filter or no matter whether you are using username password authentication filter. Is that point okay? And when I'm talking about the authentication manager, then definitely it's an interface. If I'm talking about its implementation, then the name of the implementing class is provider manager. Make sense? If we wanted to create the object of the provider manager, then definitely we have to first collect the list of authentication provider. What is authentication provider? Authentication provider is an interface. If we are talking about its implementing classes, then among the list of implementing classes, lot of classes are available, but we are mainly interested in some of the specific classes. So for example, let's say that if I'm talking about the abstract user detail authentication provider, then in case of the abstract detail authentication provider, there is one subclass available. The name of the subclass is referred as the DAO authentication provider. And we are going to use DAO authentication provider by default. Make sense? We are going to use DAO authentication provider by default. So overall, no matter whether you are making form login, no matter whether you are making the header based login, in both the cases, ultimately the request is going to the authentication manager. In case of authentication manager, what it is an interface. Which method is responsible for making login? Then definitely the method that is responsible for making login is going to be the method that is responsible for making login is going to be the authenticate method. If we are talking about the authenticate method, then definitely authenticate method will be called by object of implementing class. What is name of object of implementing class? It is provider manager. To create the object of provider manager, what I need authentication provider. What exactly authentication provider is doing? Authentication provider is an interface that is actually processing the authentication implementation. It is actually processing the authentication implementation. How many implementations are available? Multiple implementations are available. Like one of the implementation is available that is called DAO authentication provider. One of the implementation is available that is called the DAO authentication provider. Apart from that, can you see there is one more implementation available called JWT authentication provider? There is one more implementation available. The name of the implementation is actually called the JWT authentication provider. So what exactly authentication system you are using? Based on that, Spring will automatically detect and automatically inject the suitable object. Yesterday, when I was talking to you about the DAO authentication provider, then I told you one thing that DAO authentication provider is actually using user detail service. Yes or no? It is actually using user detail service. Make sense, everyone? Yes, it is. And if I'm talking about the user detail service, then actually user detail service is a core interface that is responsible for loading the data. Yesterday, I talked to you about this method also. Did you remember? That is load user by username. And if we are talking about the return type of load user by username, then it is going to be an object of user details. What exactly user detail is? User detail is an interface. What is its implementing classes? Its implementing classes user. So ultimately, no matter whether I am making login using the username password mechanism that is on the web form, or I am making login using the basic authentication filter. Ultimately, can you see that from authentication manager, the story is going to be same? From the authentication manager, the story is going to be same. So overall, what is the case you have to remember? First of all, when your request is coming, then definitely filters are by default effective when you are adding the Spring security dependency. So once your request is coming to access any resource, so first of all, authorization filter will play its role. What exactly authorization filter is doing? Authorization filter is checking whether the request is valid or not. The authorization filter actually uses the authorization manager for this work. Authorization manager return the answer in the form of authorization decision object. Okay, let's say that if it is failed. If it is failed, then what will happen? In this condition, definitely, first of all, a default login, default user ID and password will be provided to you, means a form will be displayed to you. How exactly the form will be displayed? The form will be displayed using the default login page generating filter. This form will be displayed using the default login page generating filter. Okay, I'm providing the username, I'm providing the password. When I'm providing the username and password, then first of all, an object of authentication is required. Answer is yes. How exactly an object of authentication will be created? First of all, an object of username password authentication filter will be created, and into the object of username password authentication filter, both the username and password they are available. Now, because authentication is required, so definitely that data will be provided to the authentication manager. That data will be provided to the authentication manager. When you are providing that data to the authentication manager, so authentication manager say that I need provider manager. Manager says I need authentication provider. Authentication provider says that actually I need DAO authentication provider. And if I'm talking about the DAO authentication provider, it is actually using the user detail services. And if I'm talking about the user detail service, it actually uses the load user by username method. If login is successful, all data is matched, then no problem. It is going to provide us an object of the user detail interface. And into the user detail interface, all details are already available. And actual implementing class is going to be of the user class. All that story is clear. All that story is okay, everyone. Finally, the object of user is going to be attached to the security context. Remember? Finally, the object of the user is going to be attached to the security context. Security context is an interface that actually contains the minimum information or minimum security information about the current thread. It actually contains the minimum security information about the current thread. And if I'm talking about how to get the object of security context, to get the object of the security context, we need security context holder object. Is that okay? We need an object of the security context holder. In the security context, directly there is method available. The name of the method is called the get context. And if I'm talking about the security context, into the security context, directly method is available. That is called the get authentication method. The get authentication method is going to return us an object of authentication. Once the object of authentication is available to you, then in the object of authentication, there is directly one method available. The name of the method is called the get principal method. That get principal you have to downcast to the user, and once you have downcasted the same thing to the user, then ultimately you will find the username and password both. This is what ultimate summarization of the things that actually we have covered yesterday. So in these lines, everyone, how exactly the flow is going on, is that clear to you? How exactly these four lines are flowing? I hope this is clear for all. Waiting for more responses. Very silence. Those who have done even some revision yesterday after class, for them it should be comfortable. Well, again, lot of tabs I have opened, and one more thing that I'm going to do, everyone. Basic authentication filter is already I have done, so I'm not going to cover the same topic again and again. This is going to be slightly time wasting for us. Basic authentication filter yesterday we have done. Yeah. So I'm coming back to our notes. I'm coming back to our notes. Okay. If I'm talking about the next portion, see, this day 13 content that actually I have uploaded already on day 13. This is day number 15. Tomorrow we are having our regular class, you already know. And this content, slightly I have done some modification in this content. And actually you have this content, I will re-upload on the same day 13. Means this file will be replaced. You should go through this file and you will find that Spring Security is comparatively explained here in a easier manner. So ultimately what you need to do, day number 13 content is going to be updated. If you are maintaining copy of the content in your laptop, then you have to download this latest copy. If you are reading online, then definitely it doesn't make any difference. If you are reading online, then actually it doesn't make any difference. All that detail is clearly mentioned here along with all these links. So, okay. Now talking about next section, authentication interface is done, then functional interface it is, authorization is done. Okay. How actually Spring is generating the default login and logout page, this is also done. Thereafter, everyone, okay. How to exempt an endpoint from login. This is going to be the biggest challenge for us, yes or no? Because if everything is login protected, so how exactly one can use something? Because at least for sign in, the sign in is required to be login free, yes or no? If I'm talking about sign in page, if I'm talking about sign up page, privacy policy, terms and conditions, about us, home page, they are required to be login free in every website. because they are required to be login free in every website. So how to proceed is the next thing that actually we have to take care. So see, first of all, create a configuration class with following methods. At the rate configuration, first of all, yeah, okay, let me actually do the same job here also. So for example, let's say that if I'm talking about that URL, that is /hello URL, I wanted to make this URL login free. I want to make this URL as a login free URL. To make this URL as a login free URL, the very first thing that I have to do is, everyone, I have to create a configuration class. So for creating the configuration class, let me create a new package. Let me create a new package. What is the name of the package? The name of the package is going to be com.masai school, and I am writing name of the package. This is going to be config package. Into the config package, I wanted to create a class, control N. The name of the class that, let's say, that I'm writing is going to be the security configuration class. The name of the class that I'm writing is going to be the security configuration class. First of all, because I want actually a Spring container to create the bean of the same. Because I want a Spring container to create the bean of the same, so definitely I can use at the rate configuration annotation. Is that point okay? Yes, it is. And apart from that, because this is related to the Spring security, so we have to use one more annotation. The name of the annotation is actually referred as the enable web security annotation. The name of the annotation is called enable web security annotation. So if I'm talking about the enable web security annotation, then can you see one thing? Add this annotation to the configuration class to have Spring security configuration defined in any web security configurer, or more likely to be exposed by the security filter chain bean. Overall, simple logic: whenever you are going to write down Spring security related configuration, then to write down the Spring security related configuration, your class should be annotated with @enable web security annotation. Is that part okay? Yes, it is. Now, I wanted to create a method whose object I wanted to create, but I wanted to get the Spring to manage that. Did you remember I told you the difference between the @component and @bean? When I was talking to you about @component annotation, then I told you that @component annotation is useful when you want a Spring container to create and manage the lifecycle of the bean. Means bean creation is the responsibility of the container. Bean management is the responsibility of the container. On the other hand, if I'm talking about the next part that is actually referred as the @bean. In case of @bean, Spring is not going to create the bean. We as a user are responsible for creating the bean, but the life cycle of the bean will be managed by the Spring container. So whenever you are going to do something mix up, half part you, half part Spring container, then definitely you have to create the configuration class. Into the configuration class, you have to create a method that has to be annotated with @bean annotation. Is that part clear? Is that part okay? Yes, it is. So here, everyone, what I need to write down the security configuration, method name can be any. Method name can be any because method name practically doesn't play any role except for providing the name for the bean. Except for providing the name for the bean. If I'm talking about the parameter, then the parameter is going to be of the HTTP security. If I'm talking about exception, yes, it is going to throw some exception. So I'm writing here exception as throw exception as a clause. Second thing, if I'm talking about access modifier, definitely you can have public because this is going to be called outside the package. And if I'm talking about the return type, then the return type is going to be security chain filter. Return type is going to be security filter chain. This is the fixed return type, fixed parameter that you have to create. Here actually question arises, what exactly this HTTP security is, what exactly this security filter chain is. So first of all, if I'm talking about the security filter chain, it defines a filter chain that is capable of being matched against the HTTP servlet request in order to decide whether it apply to that request. Simple logic. Simple logic. If I'm talking about org.springframework.web.security chain. So let me just once come to security chain. I have all the links in this file. I have all the links in this file. Security chain. If not available, then it will be good to directly open. Security filter chain. Yes, it is available in my browser memory. It is available in my browser memory. See, this is an interface. This is an interface. And if I'm talking about its implementing class, then one of its implementing class is available. The name of the class is referred as the default security filter chain. This is actually the standard implementation of the security filter chain. And when actually one wanted to create the object of the default security filter chain, then first it has to provide the request matcher. Second, it has to provide the filter. Second, it has to provide the filter. Here actually everybody, can you see that there is one method available? The name of the method is called the matches method. One of the method is available that is called the matches method. This method is responsible for matching the URL against the given filter. This is responsible for URL against the filter. So what exactly I am going to do? See, from this method, I am going to return an object of security filter chain. Yes or no? From this method, I am going to return an object of security filter chain. Okay. What exactly the object of security filter chain is containing? The object of security filter chain is containing, actually you can say that, some configuration or list of URLs that are allowed without authentication, as well as list of URL that are allowed after authentication. So can I say that this is going to be very much like a security guard that is having all the information that who is allowed to without making login and who is allowed after making login. Can I say this thing? Yes. So here actually it defines a filter chain that is capable of being matched against the HTTP server request in order to decide whether it apply to the request or not. Whether it apply to the request or not. So how to do this job? And second thing, the second thing that I'm going to discuss to you is going to be the HTTP security. If I'm talking about the HTTP security, so HTTP security, again, this is actually part of the Spring framework. And here actually, if I'm talking about the uses of the Spring security, HTTP security, so just a minute, once actually documentation is not displayed, let me return null for a while so that this error should be resolved. So if I'm talking about the HTTP security, an HTTP security is similar to Spring Security's XML HTTP element in the namespace configuration. It allows configuring web-based security for specific HTTP request. By default, it will be applied to all requests, but can be restricted using request matcher or similar method. Let us directly jump to the documentation part. Into the documentation part, I'm talking to you about HTTP security class. Into the HTTP security class, directly please take a look at this code. Please take a look at this code. Simple logic, simple logic. HTTP is for, definitely it is an object of HTTP security, will be provided by the Spring container itself. Which method it is calling? It is calling the method that is called the authorized HTTP request method. The authorized HTTP request method, then later on what it is calling? It is calling the request matcher. Into the request matcher, it is writing /*. So can I say this is applicable for all the URLs? /*. Can I say this is applicable for all the URLs? Yes, it is. Dot has user has role users, means actually all the users whose role is user, they are allowed to access all the URLs, and those who are making form login, they are also allowed to access all these URLs. Finally, it is calling one method. The name of the method is called the return http.build method. So see, one step that actually I am doing, instead of writing return null, I am writing return http.build. I am writing here return http.build. It build the object and return it. It build the object and return it. So what is the return type? Default security filter chain. And default security filter chain is a class that actually implements the security filter chain. Remember? Remember everyone this part? Recently I opened in front of you. Okay. Now what is my next duty? Now my next duty is to all about writing the configuration. To write down the configuration, there is one method available. The name of the method is called authorize HTTP request method. Can you see one thing? This is going to be deprecated since version 7.0. Right now we are using Spring version 6.0. What do you think? Is it safe to use this method? Is it safe to use this method? Definitely no. Answer is no, 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 no. Can you see that the next version is available? overloaded version of the authorized HTTP request is available, and this overridden version of HTTP authorized request is a new version that is going to be supported for the longer. So instead of using the default version, I am going to use authorized HTTP request method. Into this authorized HTTP request method, can you see that it is accepting one parameter of customizer? Can you see that it is accepting one parameter of customizer? Let me talk about the customizer. So first of all, if I'm talking about the customizer, can I say that customizer is an interface that is working on the generic parameters? Yes, it is. And if I'm talking about value of this t, then the value of this t is already specified here, and the value of this t is going to be that authorize HTTP request configurer dot authorization manager request matcher registry. Yes or no? That is going to be the value of that t. Clear? So see, this time, what exactly I'm going to do if I wanted to write down implementation of customizer. If I wanted to write down the implementation of this customizer, then to write down the implementation of this customizer, let's say if I am writing here, let me import something. Okay, import statement. So customizer we wanted to import from here, Spring framework, not CGLB. Yeah, Spring security. So I'm actually getting this customizer. While getting this customizer, I'm writing here that is customizer equal to enter. So if I'm talking about this AUTH, can I say this AUTH is going to be object of this class? Yes or no? If I'm writing something like this one, can I say a simple thing that the auth is going to be object of this class? Yes or no? Is that okay? Auth is an object of authorization. Authorize HTTP request configurer HTTP security dot authorization manager request matching registry class. First of all, can I say that this is an inner class? Take a look at the syntax. Dot operator is there. And if you remember, if I'm accessing something using dot operator using class name, so can I say this is going to be a static member? Have you ever listened about the concept of nested static class? Like whenever we are talking about static, a method can be static, yes. A variable can be static, yes. A block can be static, yes. A class can be static, yes. A nested class can be a static class, and that nested class can be accessed directly with using the outer class name. Is that point okay? So can I say that authorization manager request matcher registry class is a static nested class of authorized HTTP request configurer class? Clear? Yes, it is. So if I'm talking about the AUTH that I'm writing here parameter, the AUTH is going to be an object of this authorization manager request matcher registry class. So definitely using that, can I call all the methods that are listed into the authorization manager registry class? Yes or no? Using this auth, definitely I can call all the methods that are defined in the authorization manager request matcher registry class. So let us come to this class. Let us come to this class. See, first of all, if I'm talking about the customizer, customizer is a functional interface. How many methods a functional interface can have? Only one. What method is available? The method is available that is called the customize method. The method is available that is called the customize method. If I'm talking about this method, then can you see one thing that, sir, in this method, there is one method available whose return type is void and it is accepting one parameter. So can I say it is equivalent to a consumer? Can I say it is equivalent to a consumer? A consumer is a functional interface whose method accepts some parameter but actually return you nothing. The same story is getting repeated here. Apart from that, can you see that it is containing one more static method? The name of the static method is called the with default method, and it is giving you a object of customizer. It is giving you an object of customizer. So let me come to this authorization manager request registry class. And you can see that if I'm talking about this authorization request manager registry class, it is actually a super class of one more class. The name of the class is called the authorized URL class. The name of the class is called the authorized URL class. Into this authorized URL class, can you see this method? Authenticated method. The authenticated method actually specify that URL are allowed for any authenticated user. Deny all. Deny all actually specify that the URL are not actually allowed for anyone. Similarly, if I'm talking about has any role, so URL is actually allowed for only those who are having the specified role. Has authority. URL is allowed only for those who are having a specific authority. Permit all. What is the meaning of permit all? It specifies that URL are actually allowed for anyone. URL are actually allowed for anyone. So can you see that actual methods are available in this authorized URL class? Yes or no? Actually, whatever I wanted to exempt, whatever I wanted to allow, that everything is actually available here. Clear or not? Yes, it is. So if I am doing that job, so for example, let's say that using this auth is an object of authorization manager request matcher registry class. This authorization manager request matcher registry class is subclass of authorized URL class. The authorized URL class is having all these methods. So let me do one simple job. For example, initially, let's say I am writing auth dot. After writing the auth dot, let me write down here permit all. What went wrong? Why this is not happy? Just a minute, let me check. Customizer HTTP request customizer equal to. So what exactly the case is? It is customizer. So definitely the customizer is going to return you an object of this is I'm writing the implementation of supplier. So I'm writing the implementation of no, customizer is a consumer. In case of consumer, it is accepting an object but actually return nothing. Yes, it actually accepting an object but actually it returns nothing. So I have to write down AUTH. This thing I can write down within bracket or without bracket also. So then I'm writing that part. Yes, my mistake, my bad. Using this authorization, everybody, can you see that I can actually directly method is available. One of the method is available that is actually called the request matcher method. One of the method is available. The name of the method is called the request matcher method. For the request matcher, I am writing that part dot. Thereafter, I am calling the method. The name of the method is called the permit all method. This time, can I say that I am allowing all the URLs? This time, can I say that I am actually allowing all the URLs? Yes or no? Okay, that's good. That's good. That's good. Then everyone, actually, I wanted to allow the form login also. I wanted to allow the form login also. And to allow the form login, there is method available. So using auth, I can call the method. The name of the method is going to be form login. And one more method is available that is called the CSRF disable method. Let me just come back to the implementation here. Okay, please take a look at this code. Please take a look at this code. Here, everyone, can you see that HTTP, which is an object of HTTP security? Okay, sir. In the object of the HTTP security, here I am creating the object of the customizer. So using actually the HTTP security, what I have to do? Using the object of HTTP security, what I have to do? I have to call a method. The name of the method is called the authorized request method. Into this authorized HTTP request, I am passing the object of this customizer. Is that okay? Into this authorized request, I am passing the object of the customizer. Okay. Once the object of the customizer I am passing, what is the return type of this method? What is the return type of this method? Return type of this method is HTTP security. Using the HTTP security, can I call the form login method? Yes, I can call. So while calling the form login method, what I need to do? I need to again pass here customizer dot with default. CUSTOMIZER. Customizer dot with default. Customizer dot with default method I need to call. Similar to that, I need to call one more method. The name of the method is actually called the form login I have called. That's okay. CSRF is right now not important. We will talk about CSRF later. Once this part is done, let me try to execute if without login I am allowed or not. Let me try if I am allowed or not without login. So just a second. Let me restart this application. At the red configuration is there. Bean configuration is already provided here. Alt Shift X B is what I'm writing. Let it be started and server is restarted properly. And when server is restarted properly, so let me try to hit the URL http 8080 / we are talking about the next part that is called the welcome, hitting enter. So this time actually we are getting an error. This time we are getting an error. Let me check what exactly error is. This time the error it is showing is that at the time of typecasting, class cast exception is there. String cannot be casted to Spring Framework user.core.detail. Okay, let me just once level up into the welcome client controller. Into the client controller, it is showing that there is error in the line number 26. Let me open the line number 26. Okay, I am not logged in and I am trying to actually convert the null into the object. Getting everybody what is the source of problem is? Means actually I am able to access the welcome page. Yes or no? Exception is available inside this line. So can I say that even without making login, I am able to access the welcome page when I permit all? When I permit all in this condition, I am able to access each and everything. Okay, if there is problem available with that, then no problem. I can try to access the next URL. The next URL I am writing is /hello. Am I logged in now? Answer is no. Am I logged in now? Answer is no. So overall, everybody, what actually we have to do? First of all, we have to create a configuration class. The configuration class has to be annotated with web security annotation. And thereafter, we have to create a method such that name of the method can be any. It is going to accept the object of the HTTP security, going to return the object of the security filter chain. Then using this HTTP, I have to call the method that is called the authorize HTTP request method. And when I am calling the authorize HTTP request method, then in this authorize HTTP request method, I can directly pass that object here also. Make sense, everyone? Both are also same. Both things are same. And actually, if you are at the time of developing project, if you stuck into the implementation, then no need to panic. Can you see that the code is already written here? Can you see that code is already written here? Because in the string security nodes, documentation is properly created with the help of example. It is created with the help of example. Now what I wanted to do, I wanted to allow only one URL, and that URL is going to be /hello. I wanted to restrict the URL that is called the /welcome. Is that point okay? I wanted to allow only one URL. And everyone, one more thing that actually you have to do is see, read this line very, very carefully, because this is sometime a common mistake. That's why scholars used to unnecessarily getting trapped. Please read this line. Overall, it says that if you are saying that the person whose role is user, they can access any URL. This is what you are saying in the line number 1. And then in the line number 2, what you are saying? In the line number 2, you are saying that those users whose role is admin, only they are allowed to access URL that are having admin in that. So don't you think this time it is turning contradictory? First, you are saying that those who are having role user, they are allowed to access anything. And then you are saying those who are having role admin, only they are allowed to access admin/. So this time what will happen actually, first when Spring Security actually read this line. So Spring Security says that those who are having role user, they are allowed to access anything. So whenever any person whose role is user, he is trying to access even the admin URL, Spring Security will allow him. Getting my point? What is the case here? So please, 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 please take care of the order. Restriction you should define first, then you should define flexibility or flexibility, whatever you are having into your URLs. Clear? So make sure to write down in that case. Make sure to write down in that case. So this time actually everyone, what is my target? My target is that I wanted to set the customizer. Into the customizer, I am writing that if I'm talking about the URL that is ending with hello, everybody is allowed to access the same, no problem. But if I'm talking about the again request matcher, I am calling into the request matcher, I am writing if the URL that is actually ending with the welcome, for that person, the person is required to be authenticated. Clear? Hello is open for all, but if I'm talking about the welcome URL, then for the welcome URL, actually one is required to be authenticated. Authenticated means I am not talking about the role, or even I can write down the /star also. Even I can write down the /star also. So everyone, let's say that again, I'm going to run this application. Alt Shift X B is what I'm pressing. And when I'm pressing the Alt Shift XB, the server is getting restarted. This time again, I am available on the web browser. Onto the web browser, let's say that first I'm trying to access the hello. If I try to access the hello, then don't you think that it is what I am able to access without making login? Answer is yes. Now let me try to hit the next URL. When I try to hit the next URL, that is called the welcome URL. It is directly sending me on the login page. Now I am available on the login page. I am writing here Masai. I am writing 12345, clicking on the sign in button. Now I am able to access. After making login, can I access the hello URL also? Let us try. Definitely hello URL is open for all. So how to configure this part? Is that okay? Yes, it is. Spring security is actually on the first site. It looks extremely complicated. Even I when come across the Spring security for the first time, so I found that it is very much like, you can say that a very big family where every person is having a role and you have to remember about each and every person. This is what I felt on the initial day. But when I actually took my first batch, definitely before taking the first batch, I revised this thing for 2 to 3 times. I was, you can say that, reasonably comfortable. And then actually I realizes that in the later on, even in the project development, I have to do same type of job again and again. Means if I'm talking about the learning curve, then definitely learning curve is looking steep for the Spring security. But once you have learned whatever we are providing you, then almost this type of job is again what you have to do into your project. Means once you have learned this, there is nothing so much to do the customization. Getting my point? There is not so much to do the customization. Initial learning is definitely slightly difficult. Lot of members are there. You have to remember about them. But once you have completed the Spring security properly according to the Masai syllabus, so definitely you can assume that 60 to 70 or even 80% of the Spring security is you have done, because the same thing is what you have to integrate into your project in the corporate also. And why exactly we are talking about each and every member? In future, if there is any demand of the customization, then at least you know that what I have to change. Normally what I can change, first of all, definitely I have to change the authentication provider, because ultimately if I'm talking about job of the authentication, so ultimately job of the authentication is handled by authentication provider. Authentication provider is using what? User detail service. User detail service is returning what? User detail. What is the implementing class of user detail class? It is user class. So simple. Let's say that I wanted to use customer as a user. So if I wanted to use a customer as a user, then can I create a customer entity class that is implementing the user detail interface? Yes or no? I can create, no problem. The same customer class can actually inherit, can implement the credential controller interface also. And when actually you are going to use, let's say that at the rate configuration or at the rate component kind of thing there, or you are going to configure the security manager here. So that time, definitely when you are providing the implementation of user details, then definitely your implementation will be counted, not Spring's default implementation. Common logic, makes sense? So customization is overall very easy once you know who is doing what. Well, let me move further. So this is the first basic example that actually I have taken. Now let me add one more request. I am going to the client. Into the client, I wanted to add one more request, and this time that request is going to have the another type of mapping. That another type of mapping that actually I am writing is the post mapping. That another type of mapping is what exactly I am writing is going to be the post mapping. So if I'm talking about the post mapping, so we are writing here post mapping here. Let me hit here, and here actually name of the method that actually I am writing is, let's say that the post again, and thereafter I am writing hello, and one more same thing I am writing here. What exactly the case is? Let's say that I wanted to allow this post URL also. I wanted to allow this post URL also. Sir, can I add the multiple URLs? Yes, you can add the multiple URLs. There is no problem. How to add the multiple URLs? Just actually space them, provide them a comma separated list of the URL. Is that okay? That post is also allowed without making login. Hello is also allowed without making login. Remaining all the URLs are required authentication. Point is clear? Remaining all URLs required authentication. Let me run this project again. Let me run this project again. Alt Shift XB. Okay, when I'm writing the Alt Shift XB, everyone, then actually let me come to this part again. And thereafter, first I'm trying to access the URL that is called the hello URL, perfectly accessible. Now I try to access the next URL that is called the post URL. When I try to access the post URL, then can you see that actually I was not able to access first because I was actually sending the GET request. because I was sending the GET request. Let me come to the postman. When I'm coming to the postman, into the postman, I'm writing here /hello. When I'm writing here /hello, then everyone, if I'm clicking on the send request, everything is perfect. If I try to access the URL that is called the /welcome using the GET request, can you see that I'm getting the web response? And into the web response, practically actually what I'm getting the login form. I'm getting the login form. Okay. If I try to access the post URL without making login, so I'm hitting the post, and after hitting the post, let's say that again I am writing here post here and clicking on the send button. After clicking on the send button, again can you see that it is providing me login form? Even my request method is post, and even when my URL is post, still it is saying that make login. Despite of that, actually I have added post into the list of exempted URL. Mysterious? Yes or no? Slightly mysterious behavior? Yes, it is actually mysterious behavior, but actually it is not. What you have to do whenever we are talking about the post request, in case of post request, the CSRF, that is called the cross-site request forgery. The cross-site request forgery is always enabled. First thing you have to do is, in case of the post request, you have to disable the cross-site request forgery. And how to disable the cross-site request forgery? To disable the cross-site request forgery, there is one more method available. The name of the method is called the CSRF method. There is one more method available. The name of the method is actually called the CSRF method. Can you see everyone? This method is available. CSRF method. Yes. For the CSRF method, definitely one object is available, and using this object, you have to call the method that is called the disable method. So what exactly I am saying? I am actually disabling the CSRF for this post request. Otherwise, it is not going to work. Otherwise, it is not going to work. So what exactly the thing I am doing is, first of all, I am disabling the CSRF. After disabling the CSRF, then actually I wanted to let it go. Once let me restart my application. Once let me restart my application. Alt Shift X J is what I'm writing. Alt Shift X B, sorry, not J. Because using the web browser, we can send only two types of requests. One is going to be GET request, second is the POST request. Whenever we are hitting the URL, then it is a GET request. Let me come to the Mr. Postman again. After coming to the Postman again, this time actually, can you see that I'm able to hit the POST request without making login? Yes or no? I can actually hit a post request without making login. So why exactly I have to disable the CSRF for the post request? Actually, I have to disable the CSRF request if I wanted to make them accessible without making login. What is CSRF? How it is working? That thing we are going to have discussion into the tomorrow's session. That thing we are going to have into the discussion into the tomorrow's session. So let me talk about the next part. So first of all, everyone, how to perform the security configuration. Is that part at least 40-50% clear into your mind? Even if it is 40-50% clear, then we are in winning position. Even if it is 40-50% clear, then we are in the winning position. Don't worry. So disable. So here I'm writing disable the CSRF to allow users to disable the CSRF to allow users to access post request without making login. No need to make login. Without making login, you can do. So that is what you need to do. Then definitely authorize HTTP request method is what you are calling for the form login, because we wanted to allow it in case of form login also. That's why customizer dot with default is what exactly we are writing. So see, now what happened? In future, let's say you are having some demand in the company, this URL you have to allow, this type of request you have to allow, this thing you wanted to block. Now, you are already aware what we have to do. First of all, we have to create the method. Name of the method can be any. What parameter we have to pass? We have to pass the parameter that is called the HTTP security. What is the return type? Return type is going to be security filter chain. Okay. What exactly this HTTP security is doing? This actually allow me to define the security configuration. What method I have to call? I have to call the method. The name of the method is called the authorize HTTP request method. So directly what I need to do, directly jump to the documentation. When you are jumping to the documentation, here example is also available. And when you are writing the code, then you know what exactly it is taking, customizer. Okay, what exactly customizer is? It is taking only one method. That is called the customizer method. What is the value of t? The value of t is already defined here. The value of t is already defined here. Okay, what exactly this class is having? Jump to the code. Who is the parent class? The parent class is authorized URL class. Now, by looking at these list of methods, you can write any type of configuration. Clear? You can write any type of configuration. You can change the configuration very easily. If this is not known to you and directly somebody hand over this code to you, you will find yourself completely blank. You will find yourself completely blind. Something is working, but how it is working, that I don't know. And this is a fatal situation for a developer when he is not able to understand the code. You have to deep dive, then actually you will find that you are able to do a lot of customization. Now, for example, everybody, I am saying you that I wanted to allow only those users whose role is staff. I wanted to allow only those users whose role is staff. So can I say one thing directly? There is one method available. The name of the method is called has any role method. Yes or no? Or has role method? Just I have to call this method after the request matcher. What I need to do? I need to do authentication dot request matcher. I have to specify all the sequences dot. Here I need to write down instead of permit all. I have to write down dot has role double quotation. I have to write down name of the role, that is going to be staff. Let's say that I wanted to allow for staff as well as for the customer, but not for the guest. I wanted to allow for staff as well as customer, but not for the guest. Then in this condition, I have to use that method. Yes or no? In this condition, I have to use that method. Answer is yes. Can I define on the behalf of authority also? Answer is yes. Can I behalf on the behalf of list of authorities also? Answer is yes. Permit all is available. Remember all is available. If you wanted to deny all, if you wanted to keep authentication, so everything you can do very easily. The important class available is the authorized URL class. The authorized URL class is subclass of authorize manager request matcher registry class, whose object is directly provided into the customizer into the authorized HTTP request method. If I'm talking about the further methods of this class, then can you see that HTTP security is actually the key class in case of security configuration. Why it is that? First thing, if I'm talking about this method, course method, have you ever come across the situation? I think in the last sprint, day 3, one assignment was there when actually you are creating the API using the REST Spring Boot, but you wanted to access the API using the JavaScript. Did you remember that assignment? In the Sprint 3, one assignment we have given you where actually we asked you to develop that API using the Spring Boot, but we were telling you that you need to access that API on the web browser using HTML and JavaScript. At the time period, those who have done this assignment, they are finding that actually the request is not allowed by default. Why? Because if the request is coming from some other domain, then the request is not allowed. This is default security feature. In this condition, actually, you have to allow cross-origin resource sharing. You have to allow cross-origin resource sharing. For this thing, there is one annotation available. The name of the annotation was, I think, cross-origin or course annotation was there. Into the course annotation, you have to write down star, means allowed from everyone. Means allowed from everyone. So these course configuration, if you wanted to do, then to do the course configuration, you have to use that method. Similarly, if you wanted to perform the CSRF configuration, for the CRSF configuration, this is available here. If you wanted to enable the form login in a specific way, that content is also available here. If you wanted to build the object of HTTP security, then method is available there, logout, login, or authentication client, etc., etc. So can you see that HTTP security is a very important class that allow you to customize the security requirement of your application using a single point of control. So different type of logins are there. SAML login, O authentication, etc., etc. Cyber security is a very good trend. Nowadays, it is extremely potentially in the demand. But keep in mind, for cybersecurity, you have to be very good in multiple subjects. Then only it is allowed. Okay. Can you take a look at this method? Can you take a look at this method? Using user detail service, we can get actually HTTP security also. We can get the HTTP security also, session management, etc., etc. So this is one of the key class. Okay. And one more thing that you might have noticed. Can I create users also? Can I create users also? Answer is yes. you can create users programmatically also. First type, user is created how? The very first thing, user is created by mean of Spring automatically with the default username and password. Second, we can define the username and password into the application.properties file. Third, can we create the user here also? Answer is yes, you can create the user here also. Make sense, everyone? Programmatically, you can create a user also, because what exactly a user is? User is an object. Can I create the object? Answer is yes. Can I create the object? Answer is yes, you can create the object. So first of all, everyone, let's say that I wanted to create the user dynamically. If I wanted to, so this code is to create the user dynamically, or you means actually during runtime. If you wanted to create the user dynamically, that is during the runtime. So if I'm talking about the method, then definitely, first of all, I have to annotate with @bean annotation. If I'm talking about the method, then method is going to be public. If I'm talking about the return type, then definitely the return type is going to be user detail service. The return type is going to be user detail service. Method name can be any. Do I need to pass any parameter? Almost answer is no. I do not have to pass any parameter. Then everyone, first of all, for example, I am talking about the user class. Into the user class, there is one method available that is called the with default password encoder. With the default password encoder. With default password encoder, if I'm talking about this method, that is called the with default password encoder. Let me once set this. If I'm talking about this method, default, oops, just a second. Let me write down return null once, because actually due to the error, it is not able to generate the Java doc. It is not able to generate the Java doc. Add suppress warning to the deprecation. Okay, well, first of all, everyone, if I'm talking about the return type of with default username password, what is the return type? User builder. What is the return type? User builder. Can I say that user builder is a nested class? Can I say that user builder is a nested class of user class? Please take a look. Take a look. See this. User class is available. Within the user class, there is one more class available. The name of the class is called the user builder class. Into this user builder class, if I'm talking about the methods, then can you see that one method is available called the username method? One method is available that is called the password method. Another method is available called the password encoder method, but I'm using the default password. I can assign the rules also. I can assign the authorities also. Apart from that, I can assign a lot of things here also. So thing that actually that I am doing is into the security configuration here directly we are calling the method. The name of the method is called the username. What username I am writing? Username I am writing is ABCD. What password I am writing? The password I am writing is, let's say, 12345. The password that actually I am writing is 12345 is what exactly we are writing. Thereafter, everybody, let's say I am writing here return. Let's say I am writing here return. And finally, one more method that actually I need to call. The name of the method is going to be called as the build method. The name of the method is going to be called as the build method. But okay, just a minute, just a minute. One thing that I forgot. One thing that I forgot to do is mm, why you are not happy, dear? But hmm, this time okay. This time okay. Okay, everyone. See, I'm actually building a user, and while using the builder, I'm using a deprecated code. Yes or no? While building a user programmatically, I am actually using the deprecated method. Yes or no? With default password encoder is a deprecated method. But once actually, if I'm talking about the documentation of this method, to talk about the documentation of this method, first of all, I have to jump to the user class. I have to jump to the user class. Into the user class, I have to talk about the method. The name of the method is going to be the with default password encoder method. Please take a look at the deprecation warning. Please take a look at the deprecation warning till here. Done everyone? Why exactly using this method is not unsafe? Yes or no? So actually this thing you should not use into the production purpose, but for the learning purpose, definitely it is completely safe to use this method. It is completely safe to use this method. Is that okay? How to create a user programmatically? Once actually now let me do one job. I'm doing the right click running as in the form of a Spring Boot application. Then let us check if this username password is working or not. So coming here, Alt Shift XB is what we are writing. After writing the Alt Shift XB, now let me try to hit the URL. So first of all, let's say that I'm coming to the browser, and after coming to the URL, I'm hitting the welcome URL. I'm redirected to the login page. First of all, let me try with Vasai12345. If I'm trying Vasai12345, what message I am getting? What message I am getting? Bad credential, because once you have programmatically configured the username password, then actually the username password that you are working in that you are providing in the application.properties file, they will not work. Getting my point? Once you have programmatically configured the username password, then definitely the username and password that you have configured into the application.properties file, they will not work. Why? Because programmatically you have configured something that is more secure, more confidential. Now let me write down the username ABCD and I'm passing the 12345, clicking on sign in. This time is it working? This time is it working? And everyone, you can add multiple users also. Directly the code is already given in front of you. Directly the code is given in front of you. Here in this example, can you see that it has added two users? It has added two users. So you can add a number of users, no problem. Programmatically, I told you that how to add the users. Programmatically, I told you that how to add the users. This part clear, everyone? Today, I hope that you are finding yourself slightly comfortable with the Spring Security than yesterday. I have written this comment also. Define username and password for the user here too. This code and this sheet both will be provided to you. Okay. This code and this sheet both will be provided to you. And everyone, before coming to tomorrow's class, because tomorrow is going to be the last class, it is Saturday. This time, no PSC will be available for you due to unavailability of the time. So in this condition, definitely your cooperation is required for the better result on your side. What you need to do before coming to class, please actually go through the examples that actually we have defined in the day 13 as well as in the day 14 notes. If these notes are not shared to you, I will share, don't worry. But tomorrow you are expected to come into the class after reading these notes. Definitely we are going to run out of time. So tomorrow, what exactly I am going to cover? First, actually, I will cover the Spring Security using Spring Data JPA. In the Spring Data JPA, I will talk about the adding the roles and authorities also. When you are talking about the Spring Security for API, then in case of Spring Security for API, the next type of authentication is most important. And this authentication is referred as the JWT token authentication. This authentication is referred as the JWT authentication token, or this is called JSON authentication token. These two authentications are often asked. That's why I'm going to cover them. Remaining part, whether we will be able to cover, we will not be able to cover, that I cannot guarantee it. But whatever foundation is required, that is very, very excellently I have set it up for you. So please, before coming to class, go through these notes properly. Getting my point? Yes or no? If you come into the class after reading these notes, then definitely things are going to be extremely easy for you, believe me. Believe me. Okay, everyone. So it's time for your break. At 1 p.m., we are going to start the leap session. So first of all, everyone, you people are please requested to keep your screen shared during this leap session. Often it happens that out of 30 scholars, maximum 15 or 16 scholars are sharing the screen. Remaining scholars, they are neither sharing the screen, not responding on the chat, even after sending the personal messages. This time, those who are not responding to the personal messages, their name will be directly given to the operations team, then into the MUI call. You are answerable clearly. Those who are facing any difficulty, they can contact me on the personal chat also. Second thing, and you should follow the reactive, etc. Pay attention factor. So not going to take too much time on this. You know it very well. Today we will focus on the full interview round. So how to configure, etc., etc. This time, everyone. If I'm talking about the full interview round, then I think you know it very well that if you the your one evaluation that is after evaluation 4 that I'm normally calling evaluation 5. Evaluation 5 will be your Hukuma evaluation and it will be completely on the content that we have covered in the SB201. Yes or no? This will be completely on the SB201 content. So this time actually I'm going to give you two primer link. One primer link is for homework and one primer link is for the classwork. Right now I'm going to share the classwork primer link. Into the classwork primer link, I have covered the content from Spring Data JPA to Spring Security. Not everything from the Spring Security, but you can say that whatever we have covered so far. And one more primer link in which I will give you a primer link that will ask questions from the Spring Core. Apart from that, it will ask question about the REST API as well as Spring Boot as well as how to handle the exception kind of things. So if you are actually appearing in these two evaluations, if you are attempting them sincerely, then it is going to be a big help in case of Hukumo interview. Getting my point? Yes or no? That one. So I'm going to share that link to you. You people are requested to keep your screen sharing and please, 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 please honestly appear in that. Rest of the things you know it very well, what to do, etc. So first of all, everyone, I'm providing you the first link that is actually a form link. The first link is available. That is actually called the form link. Let me actually take this form link from here because it is a better URL and it is something that is easier to understand also. So student Google form. One link I'm providing you is the student Google form link that is containing all the extensions. And another link that actually I'm going to provide you is the primer link. So this primer link is also what I'm actually sharing with you. Okay, everybody. Now mode of communication will be chat. I'm actually allowing everyone to share the screen. My screen sharing is stop. You people are allowed to share your screen. Please share your screen. Now mode of communication will be chat only. And you people requested to please be participative. I'm muting myself, turning off my camera.